Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I am joined by my two co-hosts, Michael Hall and Michael Reed. The Burgundy Zone is part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more at www.listofrederick.com. But we are joined from the other side of the globe, 10,000 miles away, Mr. Chad Ryan of the Washington Rap Podcast. Everyone knows you you're so busy, and you're good friends of Felix Trammell. Thank you for joining us tonight, Chad. How are you doing?
Kyle and the mics, it's good to be here. Hope you're all doing well, and good morning from me, good evening to you, and let's have some fun talking Washington Commanders.
Yeah, it's crazy because you're already in tomorrow, Chad. So this is It's like talking to somebody in the future. My first question to you: I've seen a lot of theories, scenarios been thrown around for quarterbacks, and one scenario that I saw that I didn't really have a good feeling with was that Chase Young was being brought into packages for a quarterback. Would you agree that that's something that should happen?
So I guess there's two answers to that. So that sort of rumor, that report started proliferating because Ben Standing from The Athletic sort of mentioned it as a throwaway possibility. It wasn't a report. He wasn't saying, yes, the team is considering this. And then unfortunately in the modern NFL media fans, landscape, there's a bunch of accounts that sort of pick up on those things and push them and try to turn them into something they're not, try to make it a big thing. So there's a bunch of Twitter accounts that sort of do that. And that turned into suddenly a throwaway comment from Ben Standing turned into, yes, Washington is putting Chase Young on the trade block. The answer I have for that, and based on what I know of what the Martys are looking at doing, what Ron Rivera is looking at doing, is it's not necessarily true, but it's not necessarily not true. There's nothing that they've said yes or no, we won't do at the moment. I think it's extremely unlikely, only because there's no quarterback out there that, it's not that Chase Young is better than any possible available quarterback. It's that the trade package that Washington has to be prepared to pay and another team has to be prepared to receive, you need to find that balance. And I don't see a trade for, like a Russell Wilson that would involve a Chase Young, because a team like Seattle, if they trade Russell Wilson, let's use that as the example for now, and we'll get more into Russell Wilson later as well. Yes, they would love a player like Chase Young, but more than anything, they need draft stock and assets that they can use to get their next quarterback, right? So they're definitely going to want pick 11. Now, if you are trading pick 11 and Chase Young, yeah, that's probably arguably fair trade value for Russell Wilson, but then you wouldn't add a future first round pick onto that, or a future, two future first round picks. And if you're trading for, say, a Russell Wilson, Seattle's going to want multiple first round picks. So if they decide they don't like any of the quarterbacks in this year's draft, they have stock for next year. Things like that, right? So that's sort of the long and complicated answer why I doubt there's a trade package out there for a veteran top-tier quarterback that would involve Chase Young specifically. Now, someone like Daron Payne, I think, makes a lot more sense.
Agreed.
Daron Payne, very, very good defensive lineman, extremely good. And, he's been doing that thing players do, put footage online of him practicing in the offseason. I saw one last night where he's looking fast. He said he wants to, put his name in the history books and be the first player to register a sack as a commander. Cool. That's great. But of all the players that Washington have, that top tier, that top echelon of players, I think Daron Payne makes the most sense to trade, right?
Agreed.
You're definitely going to keep Jonathan Allen. He's a captain of the team. He's better than Daron Payne, but not significantly better, but he is better. You're going to keep Chase Young. You're probably going to keep Montez Sweat because we don't know. He hasn't really hit his ceiling yet, and you don't want to trade a guy before you know what his ceiling is. So I think a trade for a Russell Wilson type quarterback, if one does eventuate, will be a couple of years worth of first round picks and a Daron Payne type of trade.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. I think Daron Payne would make the most sense, especially when you look at that position. We have so many defensive tackles, and it sucks, but it does kind of make somebody like that a little bit more expendable, if you will. But if you look at Washington's free agents, we have a couple pretty big contributors to this team over the last few years that's contracts are up. Who do you think is the most essential that we get re-signed?
I mean, even though we're not talking about a free agent at the moment, if you're talking about re-signings, it's Terry McLaurin, right?
Right.
So let's just say that now and move on, because I don't want people. I don't want to talk about someone else and people go, "Oh, you didn't mention Terry McLaurin." Of course, Terry McLaurin is the most important re-signing.
Just of this coming up off season, we'll say.
Yeah. So I know Charles Leno has just re-signed a deal, right? And like that's sort of the bookmark for what you want from a free agent deal. You want someone to come in, prove it, make themselves, establish themselves as an anchor at their position and sign a good deal, right? So there's a couple of players on Washington who are looking at that Charles Leno type situation. You hope that works out. Um, I'm trying to think of who I would really, really want that to happen. I mean, going into this offseason, Charles Leno was my number one, and that happened, so that's good.
Right.
Let me look at a list here and let me jog my memory because there's a few guys like that.
Right.
Bobby McCain, J.D. McKissick, Cornelius.
Brandon
neither of those guys are on that level, right? Like, as I said, going into this offseason, Charles Leno was that number one. Bobby McCain played well. J.D. McKissick played well, but like the team's going to be fine without them as well, right? There's no one on that level of importance like Charles Leno was. He was
even
the biggest
Brandon
one.
Scherf, I feel, isn't on that level.
Well,
because he's a guard.
Yeah, Brandon Scherf is the big wild card, right? Because we're not going to franchise him again. Right. You can make an argument that he probably shouldn't have been franchised this previous season, but that's water under the bridge.
Fair.
I don't think the team and Brandon Scherf are as far apart from each other as is being portrayed in the media. I think what Brandon Scherf's camp is looking for is, yes, he wants to be pretty much the highest paid guard in football, and we'll call that fair for now. I mean, he's a pro bowler. There's guards who are arguably better than him, but they're in different team situations. So for Brandon Scherf to sign with the Commanders, he needs to be paid a lot. And Washington do have the cap space to do that, but do they need to do that? That's the tricky part, right? So at the moment, there's a divergence between the camps, and it is mostly money. And it's not so much the total of the contract, it's the per year of the contract. And that's the tricky part that franchise tags back you into, right? Because all of a sudden you're on a 1 year deal, but it's, so far above what your normal 1 year average will be. And all of a sudden it's time to sign a new long-term contract, and you don't want to go, well, I was earning X million last year, 16 million, 20 million last year. Why am I only earning 10 million this year? And we saw this with Kirk Cousins, right? This happens anytime you franchise someone. That 1 year deal resets the market on your value, but not in a realistic way for the team that has signed you to that franchise tag. It's really tricky once a team franchises a player, especially in consecutive years, to find value in a long-term contract on that same team. I know Brandon Scherf wants to stay here, but at the same time, he also wants that payday because he's probably, as crazy as it sounds, because to people like me, Brandon Scherf is still relatively new in the NFL, but he's been in the NFL now for 5 years? So he's probably got one big contract left, potentially.
Yeah.
So he needs to look after himself and get that big contract. As it stands at the moment, I don't think it will be with the Commanders, but I also won't be shocked if they do end up making it happen. I'm not sitting here saying it won't happen because it still can. I'm not ruling it out yet, but the odds are stacked against it.
Right, definitely. So jumping back to the quarterbacks, kind of two new developments came out today. I was listening to Kevin Sheehan. They had Diana Rossini on from ESPN, and she was talking about her Aaron Rodgers coverage and pretty much saying that out of the teams that she knows of that have the offers on the table, the Commanders are not one of them. So
Correct.
It's a two-part question. My first question would be, are you surprised that they didn't put an offer out for Aaron Rodgers? And then to kind of piggyback off of that, it came out today that the Vegas' odds have us as the favorite right now to land Deshaun Watson.
DraftKings Sportsbook.
Yeah, exactly. So my second question would be, are you surprised that we're the favorites, and would you be a fan of Deshaun Watson coming here, or are you still in the crowd of we got to figure out what the legal stuff is first?
Yeah. So, okay, first question, Aaron Rodgers. No, I wasn't surprised. I've known for a while that the team weren't pursuing him, mainly because there's an age issue, right? If Washington is paying a premium price for a quarterback, I know that they're looking for someone for at least 5 years. Aaron Rodgers isn't going to give you that. Like, everyone's going, oh, well, Tom Brady. Tom Brady is a freak. Tom Brady is an exception to the rule. Aaron Rodgers is not going to be playing until he's 45 years old. Aaron Rodgers is coming off an MVP season. Clearly, he can still play at this level and is probably going to be good for, X number of years, but you're looking for certainty, right? So no, I've, you can go back through my Twitter timeline. I've said, I don't believe that Washington is pursuing Aaron Rodgers. I didn't have anything concrete from inside the team. I speak to people now and then, but on Aaron Rodgers specifically, I never had anything concrete. On Deshaun Watson, I've gotten some pretty concrete stuff in that the team is not interested in pursuing Deshaun Watson. So I'm very surprised that DraftBook has us as the favorites, because this is really simple and it's got nothing to do with on-field stuff. And again, this is stuff I've tweeted before, so you can go back and find it. What does Deshaun Watson want in a new team? He wants a fresh start. What are the Commanders looking for in a new quarterback? They want a fresh start. Both parties, both Deshaun Watson and the Washington Commanders, are coming off the past few years where they've been linked to sexual misconduct, sexual assault allegations. Joining together brings both of those for both parties right to the forefront, and it's not in the best interest of either party. So it's got nothing to do with his on-field ability. It's got nothing to do specifically with those legal questions, which are big, and I think he is going to be facing a suspension. I would be shocked if at the end of this there isn't an NFL-imposed suspension. That's nothing to say. I don't know exactly where his legal issues will go and if there's going to be like jail time or anything like that. I don't think that's where it's going. I think we're looking at civil suit settlements and things like that. But that said, it doesn't make a lot of sense for either party for what they're looking for, which is why, and you go back to I think it was late January. I was the first person who sort of got word that Washington were heavily pursuing Russell Wilson. And this is looping back to what we were saying at the start. Russell Wilson is who I understand the Washington Commanders have circled as the top tier quarterback they're pursuing. Now, if they can't get Russell Wilson, they will adjust. They're not going to go to Deshaun Watson. They're not going to clearly go to Aaron Rodgers or anyone like that. They're going to go down to that next tier of the Marcus Mariota, Mitch Trubisky type quarterback. I don't think, as it stands today, and I've said this on Twitter as well, I reserve the right to change this after pro days, after the combine and stuff. But as it stands today, I don't believe the team loves any of the first round quarterbacks. I know for a fact, I will say that as a fact, that they're not interested in trading up. Now, the quarterbacks who are likely to be there at 11, they'll probably have the pick of at least, two of the top three. I don't think we're going to see a run on quarterbacks in the top 10 of the draft this year. That leaves you with, a Malik Willis, a Matt Corral, maybe a Kenny Pickett, like one of those guys. None of those three look really ready to start next year. Therefore, are you going into another season with someone like Taylor Heineke as he started with a rookie behind him? That's not a situation I think Ron Rivera, Marty Mayhew, and Marty Herney want to be in. So I think something like a Trubisky, Mariota. I don't think Carson Wentz. I know there's been reports of Carson Wentz. The cost to get him will be prohibitive. That's why I think if they can't get Russell Wilson, that's probably going to be the most likely scenario. Now, I understand there'll be a large subsect of fans who aren't psyched about that outcome, that they, if they can't get a Russell Wilson, they want to go to the draft because they think, well, even though every draft scout says this year's quarterbacks aren't good, there's always one good quarterback, and they point to Pat Mahomes going in the middle of the first. They point to guys like Justin Herbert and stuff like that. But the fact is, there's a difference between a guy who isn't the top tier quarterback in the draft, but we know is good, and a quarterback class that we know isn't as good as previous years, and that's being generous. And still not being ready to start. So you look at a guy last year like Trey Lance, right, who went, third in the draft or fourth in the draft overall. Third. San Francisco traded up for him. You don't want to end up in that situation where you've got a guy, you can't start him, you've paid this huge price to get him, and now you're worried. Like, when do we start him? The fan base is getting a little itchy. Now, San Francisco had the luxury of having Jimmy Garoppolo, who's a competent starter. Washington don't have that. So imagine having Trey Lance on your quarterback, on your roster, not being able to start him, not having a guy better than him ready to play. Washington kind of went through that already with Dwayne Haskins, right? We don't want to do that again. I get that people want a quarterback, and I get that the draft is exciting, and I get that there's a chance that everyone is wrong about these quarterbacks and one of these guys will be amazing. But that's a huge risk to take. And importantly, for guys like Rivera and the Martys, if they're wrong, they probably lose their jobs. At this point, they're a few years in. If you bust on a first round quarterback, that's the kind of thing that gets GMs fired. It's the kind of thing that gets head coaches fired. Would you bet your career on one of these quarterbacks in the draft? I don't know if I would.
Well, that's a good point. Now, to wrap this up, Chad, I got a couple questions for you. First one being, earlier this week, Washington finally announced the hiring of Juan Castillo as the tight ends coach. Obviously, Pete Hainer is a coach that's known around the league. Are you confident in Juan Castillo? Like, for me personally, I'm lukewarm on it. I don't really know if he's going to elevate that tight end group. What's your feeling on that hiring?
Well, if nothing else, he's going to get the best out of Sammy Reyes because they both speak Spanish fluently, obviously. So that's going to be fun. But look, the tight ends coach is an interesting position, right? Because they're working with a very small group and they have a lot to do. They need to be part receiver coach. They need to be part blocking coach. Now you look at the blocking coach, the offensive line coach for Washington. I think John Matsko, the offensive line coach for Washington, is probably the most unheralded coach on the staff last year. I mean, how good was our offensive line last year?
Right.
And how many times did you hear John Matsko's name? Hardly any, but he is extremely good at his job. Now, the offensive line coach works closely with the tight ends in terms of blocking drills, blocking assignments, everything like that. Pardon me. You look at our wide receivers coach, Drew Terrell, also good. You look at how guys like Terry McLaurin have developed. Juan Castillo has a little bit of breathing space, I guess you could say, because the two guys he's going to be working closely with in that coach's room are both so good at their jobs. So yeah, I don't have any concerns about the hire. We'll see how it goes. I have a little bit of concern about the tight end group as a whole. I think Logan Thomas is excellent. I'd love to see Sammy Reyes develop. John Bates was a nice surprise, but I think there's room for improvement as a whole in that group. I don't think that room for improvement is directly tied to that specific position coach, though.
Yeah, and let's just say that Washington doesn't trade a bunch of assets in order for one of these quarterbacks, or they take the 11th overall on a quarterback. Let's just take that out of the equation.
Yep.
What do you think this team does at middle linebacker? Do you envision them using a high value pick, either first or second round, or being big contributors in free agency for a middle linebacker? What do you think they do with that linebacker spot?
Weirdly enough, I think they're kind of happy at linebacker at the moment. I don't think inside linebacker is a position that they have a red flag on at the moment. I think Cole Holcomb has been really, really good. I know Jamin Davis didn't do what they wanted last year, and now they're going to try and sort of more at that weak side linebacker position and things like that. But I don't think it's, an alarm bell situation at middle linebacker. So let's say, for argument's sake, that they sign a free agent quarterback, someone like a Marcus Mariota or a Mitch Trubisky this year. So they haven't traded for anyone. They've got that 11th pick. They no longer need to spend that 11th pick on a quarterback. I don't think they'll be looking at linebacker. I think they'll be looking at tight end, receiver, corner, maybe safety, but I don't think there's really a safety in the group that they'll be looking
Kyle
at there.
Hamilton fell, right?
Yeah, I think that's extremely unlikely, but yeah,
exactly.
That's the kind of thing.
Right.
So I think corner and tight end, again, there's not really a tight end I love at that spot, but how many times do we see the draft board change significantly after the combine, after pro days and stuff like that? So that's why I say at the moment, these things with a grain of salt. But, it's not going to be edge. It's not going to be defensive line. I don't think it'll be offensive line because they're reasonably happy with what they've got. If Brandon Scherf, if we know he's gone before the draft, that changes things. But again, I don't think they'll go offensive line in the first round because they have bigger needs at other positions. Corner's a big one, They like who they've got, but they want to add some class. They want to add some depth. They want to add some versatility. We don't have like a real big corner at the moment. I don't think middle linebacker is one of those positions that they're circling at that position at the moment.
What about receiver?
Definitely. As a receiver's one.
You think Curtis Samuel or?
Well, I think the Curtis Samuel situation has impacted how we can evaluate that position group, right? Because on paper with Terry and Curtis, it's excellent, but we didn't see it last year because Curtis couldn't get healthy. The team will know better than me. I don't have any inside info on Curtis Samuel's health. I think we're all hoping he's good to go. Good to go this season. I've heard nothing to the contrary, but we'll see. If the team does go receiver in the draft, it'll be interesting to see how much that is a reflection on their belief in Curtis Samuel to contribute this year.
Wholeheartedly agree with that. I think the draft is going to be major. They're going to be major contributors to the wide receiver spot in the draft. My last question to you, Chad, before we wrap this up. WUSA 9, before we started recording, came out with this little tidbit about the Virginia sites. There's Site A, Site B, and Site C that the Washington Commanders are eyeing for their new stadium in 2027. The three locations are Sterling, Woodbridge, and Dumfries. I know that you're in Australia. You're not like 100% like you're around this area. You know what it's like there.
Hey, Virginia, Nova is a second home for me. I'm all over this. So
all right, then. So tell me, what did you think about that?
So I was surprised because my inside mail has always been that the new stadium was most likely to be at the end of the expanded Silver Metro line, right, close to Dulles. But on the eastern side of Dulles, on that northeastern side of Dulles, this position that the WSA 9 have come out, it's at that old quarry site, sort of on the southwest side of Dulles. That sort of surprised me. I still think that's the most likely one. The south one's in Prince George's County, in PG County. I can't see them being viable. They're just too far. They're not on a metro line. I know the argument is that they're more accessible for, RVA, which has a huge fan base, and, getting them to travel will hopefully fill out the stadium with more fans and stuff like that. They seem so unviable in terms of the current infrastructure around it. 95 is just a mess at the best of times. Now you try to do like a Thursday night game or a Monday night game with peak hour traffic, getting to a stadium on the I-95 north or south, either from DC or from Richmond. Who wants to do that? So I think connecting it to the Silver Metro line expansion makes the most sense. I've always said that. You look at the map of where it's going, and there is some empty space, or there's some space that could be reclaimed on that northeast side of Dulles, and I think that makes the most sense. It's close to where Ashburn currently is. The headquarters of the team currently is. I know that as part of the stadium, they're looking at closing down that site and moving everything to the new complex. But while that's still being built, you want that transition, right? So makes the most sense to me. We'll see if this report is accurate. I assume it is. The WSA 9 guys are good at their job. I was surprised that the east, like it wasn't like around Reston. It was more around
Woodbridge.
Yeah, you guys get what I mean.
Yeah,
Dumfries,
I got you.
Woodbridge,
Yeah, Dumfries was crazy. That's like almost a 2-hour drive with traffic from Gaithersburg.
You look at stadiums similar to what Dumfries would be, right? So around the NFL, probably the biggest current comparison to what a Dumfries site would look like is Foxborough up in New England, right?
Okay,
it is not near any of the major towns. It's pretty far away. But what it is, it's a huge complex. So it's not just a stadium there. It's basically a stadium and a shopping mall and an entertainment complex and stuff like that. And winning 6 Super Bowls means people will travel to you. Are they going to do that at Dumfries? Is it going to, is Dumfries going to get people driving from all over the DMV? You're going to drive from, Rock Creek, Maryland, and, to go to Dumfries? You're going to cross over DC to come to Dumfries?
Yeah,
I don't know. I can't see it.
That's a tough pill to swallow, especially for us up here who already struggle getting to the stadium as is, with it being a throwing distance away from us. Chad, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and joining us, sir, so early in the morning for you. I can't thank you enough for being able to do it. Your podcast, The Washington Wrap, everyone can check out on YouTube. I believe that you have it published on, but just in case anybody watching doesn't follow you yet on Twitter or social media, if you wanted to plug your social media handles.
Yeah, the best thing to do is follow me on Twitter at ChadWeeko, TWW. You'll find me there. I spout a lot of crap, but it should be good fun to. I think I'm an all right follow. So yeah.
Don't downplay yourself, Chad. I love following you, and you're probably one of the most even keel, I guess you could say, accounts on Twitter. I can't thank you enough, Chad. I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy your Saturday, and enjoy that land down under.
Cheers, Mike. Kyle, always a pleasure.
All right, Chad. You have a good night, sir.
Everyone,
Man, I love talking to Chad, man. He's awesome.
Yeah. Best Twitter account in the game, too. Right after when Washington announced the name, he had that thread of things that he had heard or things that he had confirmed about how things that had been reported on the Commander's name, and how he came to the conclusion, and people we talked to. It was just so interesting watching everybody read that, and like how he withheld so much of that information, knowing what the name was more than likely going to be, like all of us did. But it was just, he's GOAT. He's the GOAT. The guy gets it.
Yeah, and one thing I will say regarding this whole stadium controversy that came about today based on the WUSA 9 report, that's only Virginia. They're not including the Maryland sites that they have. So you guys got to take that with a grain of salt to some degree. Yes, those are the sites that could possibly happen in Virginia, but it is not a foregone conclusion that it is Virginia where it's going. I still think that RFK has a shot, even though it is the longest shot of all three of the DMV. I do think that Maryland still has a pretty good chance to be able to do it. But let's get into our fan questions, guys. And this one was sent to me by the Commander's Call on Twitter through DM. Listening to the last show, and Michael Haas talked about Desmond Ridder being the best processor in college football. Can you guys talk about the importance of the pre-snap adjustments in the NFL now? We are seeing the impact of the 7-on-7 game hitting the league and being able to process what a defense is showing, and how to counter it is not talked about enough from the draft gurus. Protection adjustments, route adjustments, run checks, and he says you guys are the best at it. But thank you, Commander's Call. So what do you think about the importance of the pre-snap adjustments in the NFL, Hall?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the most important things as the quarterbacks in this new age of football we have right now, since it's such a pass-heavy league. You got to be sure of what you're looking at pre-snap. I mean, look at a guy like Tom Brady. Obviously, he was doing it for so long. He's seen every single defense there is. That he's said multiple times that pre-snap, he can look at the defense and know where he's going with the ball right away. And to have that to your advantage, I mean, obviously, it gives you the upper hand as a quarterback and for your offense. But like you said, I mean, with all the blitzes, all the passing that's going on nowadays, You got to be able to call out where the mic's at, where the blitzer's coming at, and then, like you said, protections, stuff like that. So it's definitely um, a top five attribute of a quarterback in today's passing league in the NFL.
Yeah, what it does basically, Commander's call, the importance of it is great. And it's not necessary for a rookie quarterback to come in and be great at that because you can always develop it. I don't think Tom Brady was a genius by any stretch like he was later on in his career at recognizing formations. But Aaron Rodgers is one that comes to mind that is when he walks up to the line of scrimmage, he knows exactly what formation you're in. And basically what it does, it helps the quarterback make decisions easier because essentially, let's try to equate it to like Warzone or video games or whatever. If you're playing in a place that you don't really know all that well, you're more likely to get lost or get shot up, right? Just to make it comparable for normal people. But if you go to a location that you know in Warzone, that you know that about, and a location that's good to sit up on top and snipe people and stuff like that, you're in a much better position to be able to get kills, right? And that's where it kind of is with pre-snap reads. If you know what's coming, and if you know what's there, you are more likely to get that ball out of your hands faster. Whereas Dwayne Haskins, he didn't know what he was, or Robert Griffin III, they didn't know what they were looking at, and that's why they couldn't be able to hit guys in stride or in rhythm, because by the time that they were hitting that hole, they couldn't see it. They weren't anticipating it. And that's why pre-snap is so important for a quarterback at this level, because of how fast guys are on the opposing team. Those holes close quickly. So the more you know pre-snap, the better the chances are for your offense of being able to pick up those yardage, because you know where that guy's going to be, you know where the defenders are, and you can put it in a spot that they can't be at. But that's just me. What about you, Reed?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, you guys basically hit the nail on the head. But I mean, if you look at it, every quarterback in the NFL has enough physical traits. Everybody that's coming out of the draft, they're up there for a reason. They see something special in them. But it's really kind of just between the ears, like you said, that kind of separates these guys. Like you look at Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, these guys who've had very long careers and have been very successful, have been kind of known as these cerebral quarterbacks. And it's because they can look at a cornerback and they can see what kind of press he's playing. They can see the kind of coverage he's in. They can see just based off of an alignment, if it's a safety or linebacker that's going to be matched up against their tight end or their running back and how they want to take advantage of it. They can see when somebody's fake blitzing. They can see when somebody's actually going to blitz. It's so important to really just get comfortable with what you're looking at. And it's really a game of chess. And that's kind of what separated the great ones from the good ones over the years. And you see these young guys learning that. You see Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen becoming more and more comfortable. Now they don't have to rely on their physical traits as much, and they're becoming more sophisticated NFL quarterbacks. And that's just, you can't stress how important that is.
Yeah, and I'll always remember this, but ESPN had a Halloween special kind of like promo video for Halloween talking about fear and what brings with that. And they interviewed Ray Lewis, and they talked about how like that tenacity, that violence that Ray played with, it was scary for guys to go against. But then Ray says there's another type of fear. And they talk about Peyton Manning. Yeah, and he said when Peyton's on the other side, because Peyton knew exactly what we were in at all times. We had to try to confuse him because he knew where to go based on what we were lining up in. And it was much easier for him to hit those holes, to your point, Reed. And that's essentially what our entire point is. Thank you for the question, Commander's Call. That was phenomenal. Yeah. Now, we have a question from the Colonel that we sent in a text. He says, I know that none of you are very high on Matt Corral. However, multiple mock drafts with some semi-credible pundits predict Corral going to the Commanders at 11. Please discuss the pros and cons of Corral, and would he be a good fit in Washington, Reed?
Okay. So, yeah, I feel like I'll start it off by saying I feel like Matt Corral kind of gets forgotten about at this point in the draft process because we had the Senior Bowl, and he's literally the only quarterback that wasn't involved in it of the big ones. So he kind of gets looked over. People kind of forget about him. I find myself forgetting about him all the time, but he does have a lot to like. I mean, the guy – I always say that he reminds me of Taylor Heineke with a stronger arm, and he's got a hell of an arm. I mean, he's a competitor. His teammates love him. He really brought Ole Miss to a very, very good team, and they beat some very good teams in the SEC. And I mean, a lot of that was because of him. He really developed over time. He had his games 2 years ago where he threw 5-6 interceptions, and then he kind of bounced back. And like I said, he's very tough. The main thing I think is his size. The other thing is he doesn't seem to do very well under pressure. So it's kind of, he played a lot of the RPO in college. So it's going to be something that he has to adjust to, getting used to an NFL team. And if he does go to a team that doesn't have that good of an offensive line, creating for himself, making plays, but he's got everything you want in terms of arm talent and in terms of moxie and swagger and likability. He's got everything you want there. It's just going to be a pretty big adjustment going from his college system and with the flaws that he does have into the NFL, and it could take some time. But hey, if Ron Rivera and co like him, if that's their guy, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, the pros with Matt Corral is that the dude is a leader. He's hard-nosed. He'll fight for the extra yards for you. He is athletic. He can escape by the pocket and pick up yards. He does have a strong arm, but majority of this year, what happened, everything was based off RPO and play action. So he would suck up those linebackers, and then he would drop the slant right in between them to the slant wide receiver. And all the film that I watched, that I would say that's probably like 70% of the way that the plays happened for Ole Miss this year. Look, you're looking for a timing guy, a rhythm guy, that makes a lot of sense. I've said for a while, when Sean Payton was still in the Saints, I thought Matt Corral was perfect for the Saints. Just based off what they like to do there, Michael Thomas being the slant king, I thought Matt Corral would fit in perfectly with that system, given the fact that they already do the RPO with like Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara. They're very good with that, so Matt Corral would fit right in with that offensive line. But the cons of Matt Corral, he escapes the pocket way too much. He doesn't keep his eyes downfield when he does have to move inside the pocket. His first reaction is to run instead of looking at his outlets, knowing where his outlets are. We kind of talked about with the pre-snaps there. And then also the clutch gene. I did a thread on Matt Corral on my Twitter not too long ago, and I said, this is the last straw for me. This is the last one. And what it was 2 plays back-to-back. They were down by a touchdown in the opponent's red zone. He misses a I think it was like a 3rd and 15. The guy was wide open, missed it right over his head. The other time it was a 4th and 5 on their goal line, ready to go. He throws a hitch route, and it goes to the left inside of the wide receiver, goes incomplete. They had 2 plays that he could have easily gotten that ball across the goal line and being able to put his team in a position to win, and he didn't. And that reason is why I'm kind of lower on Matt Corral than most. I try to give him chances, but basically he didn't do enough on his own. I didn't see a lot of the pre-snap recognition based on what the defense is showing you. I saw a lot of systematic throws, and that is what scares me about Matt Corral. I don't need a systematic quarterback. I need a quarterback that can come in here and make the most of his opportunity and grow with this team, and I just don't see that in Matt Corral. What about you, Hall?
Yeah, some of his pros are his release and his arm talent as far as like throwing from angles. He kind of has that kind of that real smooth, kind of quick release, kind of Aaron Rodgers type of release. Like you said before, he's a great leader. All of his teammates have nothing but great things to say about him. You see him on the sidelines of games. He's pumping up the sidelines. He's pumping up the crowd. He's getting his teammates all hyped up. You see him running up against those big linebackers and those DBs in the SEC, which obviously you're going to do that in the NFL. It's one of his cons. You do that in the NFL, you're going to get broken up.
Yep.
But for a college guy, you see your teammates see that. Obviously, it's kind of like that the Taylor Heineke effect, where guys just want to like play for you no matter what you do, and people really respect that about him. But like I said, his cons are he's coming from that heavy RPO offense. Lane Kiffin is a genius at scheming guys open, especially in the RPO offense, and pretty much in the RPO offense, you're only reading one guy on the defense, and you're making your throw and your decision based off of that one defender. And like you said, in the film, when he has to actually process a defense and go through his reads, it doesn't really look that well. Can he develop that? That's to be determined. You don't know, because he ran so much RPO in college that you can't really tell if he can actually process a defense week in and week out, practice in, practice out, game in and game out. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm not really a Matt Corral guy. But again, all I want from these people, from the front office, Ron Rivera, the quarterback's coach, Scott Turner, the coaching staff, I want them to be sure on one guy. If they all agree on one guy and he ends up being a bust, I can kind of live with that, because it wasn't, oh, I want this guy. Well, this guy wants this guy, kind of like it's been for the past, let's say, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I'm not high on Matt Corral. No, I don't think so. Like, you were right. I definitely think that the Saints would have been a perfect offense for him, just based off of all the Sean Payton's a hell of a offensive coordinator as far as scheming guys open. So that would have been perfect. But yeah, I mean, Matt Corral at 11, that's a little bit too rich for my taste.
Right. Also, real fast, to me, his biggest con is the fact that you don't know what race he is. I swear to Google it. Sometimes this guy looks super white. Sometimes he looks like a light-skinned black guy. Sometimes he looks Hispanic. Sometimes he looks Pacific Islander. And I demand to know, Matt, what race are you? Not that it's important at all. I just want to know for my own curiosity.
Yeah, and Hall, to your point about New Orleans, I didn't think Jameis fit that system very well, and you kind of saw that coming to fruition. They didn't mesh with the RPO. But the
And
next,
look, another thing with Matt Corral, he's one of those guys where like when he sees the read and like he knows what he's looking at, it's like he's probably the best quarterback in the draft.
Correct.
Like you said, the
Right.
problem is if once he has to process things, it's kind of like
And why hasn't he received the nickname Golden Corral yet? And
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
everyone already has Reed. But Reed, I'm going to go to you. The next question from the Colonel: what kind of trouble is Deshazor Everett in, and what is his injury status? Will we see him back with the Commanders?
That's tough, man. That's so sad. Honestly, the Shazer Everett thing, man, it sucks. It's a bad situation. I haven't looked too much into it because I kind of like to stay away from sad topics. I'm more of a happy guy. I like to be happy majority of the time. But no, I don't know. Regardless of what he's going to do, I think he is going to serve time. I'm not exactly sure how long. Obviously, you guys are going to touch on it, but just I don't know how he could ever be the same as a human being again. Just with everything that went on. I mean, you being the cause, not because you were drunk, but just because of being dumb, and your girlfriend lost her life because of it. Like, and you were there, you witnessed it, you watched it happen, you were hurt too from it. Like,
You
I
were
don't
the
know,
reason why it
survivor's
happened,
guilt,
right? So-
yeah, exactly. So the survivor's guilt, and then it's just I don't know if he couldn't bounce back from it, but hey, I mean, that's going to be a pretty big loss too, man. I mean, obviously he wasn't the best on defense, but he was a solid contributor, and he was a hell of a special teams captain. And I wish the best for him in life, man. Mentally, would have.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much trouble he's in, Colonel. But I do know that he was charged with manslaughter, and that's what he turned himself in. He's out on bail at the moment, but obviously he's got some money under his wings, and so I think the lawyers will be able to get him off. And to some extent, I'm sure he's going to have to go through some sort of classes and other stuff like that. But on the side of Washington being his employer, when I saw Landon Collins' birthday, when all the players went out, Deshazor Everett was there,
Yeah,
and he just
called it.
He did not
Yeah.
look good there. He should not have been there. You can just see the depression in his eyes. He just, he was in another place, essentially. And when you looked at that, he was also in a cast because I'm pretty sure he broke his leg. So if that's the case, I would not expect Deshazor Everett to be back in this uniform ever again. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I do think just based on how this team is forming and how they've kind of dealt with these kind of issues before, I don't think that Deshazor is going to be here. By the time that he rehabs and is ready to go for football shape, I'm not even sure if he's mentally is ready to be able to come back and play football again.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit everything. I don't really know his like the legal status as far as like all that. I will say that I'm with you, Kyle. I don't think that he'll be back as far as like in a Commander's uniform. He'll definitely probably most likely be healthy enough come training camp. But like you said, I don't maybe like probably training camp. That's like August, like July, August, something like that. But I don't think it'll be a Commander's uniform. Hopefully he can get around somewhere in the league and kind of find a new landing spot, maybe get a fresh start. Honestly, if they welcomed him back and he was on the roster still next year, I wouldn't be mad because at the end of the day, he's familiar with a lot of these guys on the team already. Obviously, you saw him on Landon Collins' birthday. He was out with the boys, and he didn't look like he actually like enjoyed being there. But at the same time, like stuff like that, obviously it takes time to heal. And I just feel like people that he's familiar with and like he's actually like knows personally would be like the best for him. And especially with a guy like Ron Rivera, who not only a great coach, but just kind of like that father figure, kind of like that mentor type of person in your life. I feel like Ron Rivera would be great to kind of maybe get him back mentally and kind of maybe revive his career and get back on land on another team. But wish him the best, and hopefully he can land somewhere on his feet and hope everything's good for him.
Yeah,
It's just a tragedy.
It's a tragedy
so
all the way around, and it's horrible to hear. But one thing I will say, I didn't think going out to a club was very smart for Deshazor based on the mental state that he was in that you could obviously see from that picture. I'm not going to say we make assumptions like, I know exactly how he's feeling. I don't mean to say that in any capacity, but it's much better for Deshazor if he's able to talk his feelings out with his boys when they're out fishing or out doing something where they are in a private setting. Deshazor can't really tell his personal feelings and thoughts out at the club in the middle of everyone pouring drinks and everything like that. So that was probably better, smarter for Deshazor, but I'm not here to be his life coach. The next question is for Commander OC. Hall, I'll go to you with this one first. This is fantastic. He's seeing too many people interested in signing Mitchell Trubisky. How far would he really move the needle for us?
Oh, he wouldn't move the needle at all. He would actually move the needle the opposite way, to be honest with you. For majority of the fan base, I know there's some people out there that think that Mitch Trubisky can kind of be that next Ryan Tannehill, where it was kind of like Adam Gase and Ryan Tannehill thing, where they think Matt Nagy was the reason they were dragging him down. I know a lot of NFL executives, just from like watching stuff, reading stuff, hearing stuff on like TV shows and stuff. I know a lot of executives are actually pretty high on Mitchell Trubisky as far as like being an NFL starter. He's not like a high end starter. He's not even like he's like a middle of the pack, kind of lower middle of the pack starter. But again, that's pretty much better than what we've had over here the past couple of years. But at the end of the day, I know I was a big guy that was like just super against Mitchell Trubisky in the beginning, but but that's because I want them to like swing big and like have like higher expectations for themselves. I'm tired of being like the band-aid team for quarterbacks where it's like, hey, come here for a year or two, get paid, and go on to greener pastures somewhere else.
You're tired of Alex Smith. You want Pat Mahomes. I get it.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, the more that I think about the Trubisky thing, the more that I know what Scott Turner wants to do with his offense, I definitely think that Mitchell Trubisky does fit what Scott Turner wants to do. And if you draft a guy behind him, say, I don't know, a Malik Willis at 11, or if you trade back into the first round to get Malik Willis, or Desmond Ridder in the second round or something like that, I could definitely see them like pairing those two guys together and almost pretty much similar skill sets with both of those guys, or all three of those guys, I should say. So, yeah. Would it move the needle? No, the fan base would be up in arms because, and this is Ron Rivera, he put it out there that they're going to swing big. So if they don't swing big and they get a guy like Mitch Trubisky, it's going to come off as, well, he just was hyping up the fan base. He was just pandering to the fan base again. But I definitely think that Mitchell Trubisky can win us 9 to 10 games next year, if I'm really being honest, if they put the proper weapons around him.
It doesn't move the needle for us, OC, but I can understand why they'd be interested in Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, almost like a Ryan Tannehill aspect when, like, you could look at Chicago almost like Miami was with Adam Gase, where he went from a bad situation, did the most with what he could, then goes and learns from a good system up in Buffalo. Now he's available, and it's almost like the diamond in the rough aspect and be very, very cheap considering the other options that you would have, like obviously trading for one of those big-time quarterbacks and everything, where Mitch Trubisky, you just have to give him money in order to get him here through free agency. But it doesn't move the needle for me. I understand why, because he's mobile. He obviously was a one-year starter at North Carolina, but he's shown that he was productive, can take care of the football. But Harry Eli, man, I'm not sure if that would be the mark. That would be the move. And I don't think that they would sign Mitch Trubisky and have Taylor here and then draft a rookie quarterback. I think if you're only having Taylor, then you draft the rookie quarterback and maybe bring back Kyle Allen as the third stringer. But if you have Mitchell here with Taylor backing him up, I don't see them pulling the trigger on a quarterback at all in the draft, in my personal opinion. What about you, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, if you really look at Mitch Trubisky, I get it. I get why teams think that. I mean, the guy was a first-round pick, first of all, for a reason. He's got all the tools. He has had success in Chicago. I mean, he made the Pro Bowl that year. Chicago's a dumpster fire. Now, Chicago's a wreck when it comes to quarterbacks anyway. I mean, going and spending time up in Buffalo, getting that coaching, sitting behind Josh Allen, I think that would do a lot for him. And I mean, you're right. People have only good things to say about him. I do think people are high on him. Josh Allen said that he's going to be successful wherever he goes. Of course, his team is going to say that. But like, would it move the needle for me? Not after all this Russ and Deshaun Watson talk. I mean, this guy, he was the biggest joke in the NFL not long ago. Everybody used to always make memes about him and all that. So would it move the needle? Not really. But I mean, me as a fan, I would get it, and I would end up eventually being okay with it. I would just rather maybe go another direction like a Jameis, but we would rather have a lot of things, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, if I had to choose between the two, OC, and that is signing Mitchell Trubisky free agency or trading for Jimmy Garoppolo, I would much rather pick Mitchell Trubisky.
So, yeah, in a heartbeat, yeah.
Now, the next question that we have is from Tim Towner, big fan of ours. His question is, Reed, would you trade number 11? If so, for what? Like, would you trade it with Philly? Like, would you trade it to Detroit for 32 and 34? And what do you think at quarterback at 11 and then jump back into the first round for a wide receiver? Who was your quarterback number 1 and number 1 wide receiver today, Reed?
Okay, so I'll start off. My number one quarterback is still Kenny Pickett. I just think that he offers the most, especially after kind of seeing what Joe Burrow did this past year. You see a lot of comparisons in their play. I don't think that he's as good. I don't think he's nearly as polished. He's obviously not the same type of leader, but I get why it's a copycat league. I could see why you would definitely fall in love with Kenny Pickett. And my number one wide receiver, it's a toss up for me right now. I really like Drake London a lot. But then you also, if I really look at it, somebody like Treylon Burks really offers so much different type, different ability than you've ever really seen at the wide receiver position.
He's a big body wide receiver that could catch low balls like screen balls and then create yards after the catch, and he could catch medium balls, hitch routes, out routes, whatever, and he can also do the deep stuff as well.
Copycat league.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kyle.
I hate that comparison.
But my number one receiver is probably
nowhere
Garrett.
near similar.
Probably.
I'm just saying as far as like the skill set.
I know, I got you.
My number one wide receiver is probably Garrett Wilson right now. He reminds me a lot of Terry, to be honest. Similar sizes, both went to Ohio State. I could just see Garrett Wilson being a stud. But would I trade back into round one for a wide receiver after we took one at 11? After we took a quarterback at 11? Yeah, I think that. Yeah, you can never have too many playmakers, and if it's going to help that quarterback develop, I would love it. I would be all for it.
Yeah, I was on the Big Douglas show earlier, Tim, and we did the Pro Football PFN mock draft, and what came up at number 11, we had a trade offer from Minnesota at 12, actually, and they wanted to trade up for us, and so when they did that, they offered the 77th overall pick, and so we're like, oh, pull the trigger there, let's do it. I would absolutely love to trade back, especially in this draft class that it's not really like superstar driven heavy. It's more like solid guys in the first round that can contribute, but they're not offering you the superstar ability, and that's why I would love to be able to trade back. Only 6 picks overall in this draft. You're going to need a lot more. I would like to trade back in that scenario, maybe to 22, 23, and grab another second, possibly a third rounder there, and then use those to get back in the first round to then draft a quarterback, because you want that fifth-year option just in case your quarterbacks are very, very cheap at that aspect, and that would make the most sense. Anything else, Hall?
As far as the trading thing,
also my number one quarterback is Taylor Heineke. I don't care if you wanted rookie quarterbacks. I'm gonna still put that in there. Taylor Heineke is the number one, better than any of these quarterbacks in here. I don't care. I will argue with anybody about that fact. And then number one wide receiver by far, I believe, is Treylon Burks.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say Taylor Heineke.
Terrible takes.
He's better than all these rookie quarterbacks.
Terrible
he is.
Takes.
It's a fact.
I don't know.
It's not often that you're wrong.
I know.
I'm just kidding. I don't know.
It's a fact.
As far as trading back, I would do it vice versa. I would take a playmaker wide receiver at number 11, and then if you can, jump back into the first round, get your quarterback right then and there, just so that you, like you said, if you're going to go rookie quarterback route, you want to put as many playmakers around them as possible, whether it's rookie playmakers or free agency playmakers. I'm kind of with Reed, honestly. I think that my number one wide receiver as of right now is probably Garrett Wilson. He's a speed guy. I like the Terry comparison where he's definitely a speed guy, but he can run the slants, like the short game, and take it to the house, 60, 70, 80 yards, whatever you need.
His vertical's insane too.
Yes, exactly. Vertical's insane. He has great hands. I definitely think he's instantly come right in close to 1,000-yard, if not 1,000-yard receiver with the right quarterback in the right system. And,
I think my comp for Garrett Wilson was Robert Woods.
I could see that.
I can see that too. Smooth route runner. He's definitely a good route runner, smooth route runner.
Fast.
And, as far as my number one receiver goes, I would like to say it's Garrett Wilson, but I will say, if it wasn't for Jameson being hurt, I just saw the stat on Twitter today. It was crazy. Out of his 15 touchdowns that he had last year, his average touchdown, yardage, was 45 yards. Talk about a home run hitter.
Right.
That is ridiculous.
So imagine if you do go like a Treylon Burks, let's say, because he's a freak of nature. I could easily see him being up in the top 15 picks.
My comp for him was Anquan Bolden.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Or I see a lot of DK Metcalf. I don't think he has that type of vertical or anything. Yeah, it doesn't. They're completely different. But if you do go with like a top receiver at number 11, say like we did sign a Mitch Trubisky or somebody like that, and then you trade back up to get like a Desmond Ridder, let him sit for a year or so like that. Yes, give me that. That'd be tight.
Also, sneaky free agency move, honestly. If you they go the Mitch Trubisky route, I definitely think that they can maybe get a guy like Allen Robinson for the cheap.
I knew you were gonna say it.
For the cheap. Look at Robinson's stats when he had Mitch Trubisky, though.
He's still only 28.
You know what I'm saying? He was still like an
Dude,
upper echelon receiver.
For some reason, I continue to think Allen Robinson's like 40 years old. Like,
so do I.
Don't
It feels
know
like he's
why.
been in the NFL
Yeah.
forever. That's what I'm saying. Like, you look, he's only 28. You're like, oh my god, it's crazy that your career's already over and you're that.
Injury. He's kind of people are down on him. He could be cheap.
Yeah, and
great number 2 outside guy.
One wide receiver that I am falling in love with every time I watch his film is Sky Moore. I think my comp for him was Steve Smith. Kind of a smaller wide receiver, and kind of like I talked about with Treylon Burks, he can do all 3 phases of that wide receiver, deep and then intermediate and then also shallow stuff. He is very, very, very good. Yeah. Now, let's go to our Discord chat server. The first one is from Jeff Miles. Reed, where do you see this franchise in 10 years?
Oh, I mean, if we're going to go based off of recent history, I'm going to say, I mean, we're going to be still have an average season every once in a while because that's all I've seen my entire life. But I don't want to say that. I'm going to say we're on the right track, and I'm going to say we will be a very good team. But in 10 years, maybe we will have been a contender for 5 years or so, and then now we're kind of trying to get right back to where we were or something like that. You know, I don't know. I would like to say we would be a Super Bowl contender for the next 10 years easy.
In 10 years, I could see that us playing in a Super Bowl. In 10 years, I could see Ron Rivera being the GM, if not being a consultant, and then him bringing his replacement along. I think Ron Rivera, his building of this organization is not just on a coaching phase. This is a multifaceted hiring, and it was genius by Snyder to do so. And I think Rivera, if he were to win something here, I'm not going to say a Super Bowl, but let's just say he does get to the Super Bowl. I think that is building a relationship that is more powerful than what he went through with Carolina based on him getting through cancer here. And I think like a Joe Gibbs kind of thing, I think Rivera would be heavily involved with the front office and how the makeshift of this team is. But in 10 years,
if he got Joe Gibbs to come back and coach, you know?
And so in 10 years, I do think that we'll be to a Super Bowl. I definitely think that. What about you, Hall?
I would love to be optimistic, but I'm just going to go based off of track record alone. And track record shows that we'll be an average team. We might have a season or two here and there where we make a playoff run and maybe win a game or two in the playoffs. God forbid in my lifetime that ever happens. But my heart says that they'll finally be back to like that respectable Washington team that was doing their thing in the early 90s and stuff like that, and winning Super Bowls and going to at least making the playoffs, winning 10 games a year. But my brain and track record would say that we're going to be an average team. We're going to be around that 9, maybe sometimes 10 win range, maybe 2 or 3 times out of that 10-year span. And yeah, we'll just, like I said, we'll be picking at 12 to 15 like we always do every year.
My mind is telling me no. But my body.
Telling me yes. Telling me yes.
Now the next question in our Discord chat server is from Scott Hartley
I
in
don't
the
see
UK.
nothing.
Oi! What's the percentage chance, Hall, that we get an elite quarterback via trade this offseason? Keep it short.
Oh, it's definitely dwindled down. I'll put it at 15% now that Aaron Rodgers has pretty much been knocked off the table.
Yeah, I agree.
Derek Carr is pretty much getting an extension. So
yeah, my little brother asked me about Derek Carr today, and I was like, dude, Josh McDaniels would be an idiot if he traded away Derek Carr at this moment. Josh McDaniels needs to look good as a head coach because his track record so far has been abysmal, just politically and through optics.
I will say that dude, for some reason, is so enamored because I guess he had Tom Brady for so long, then he was with Mac.
And he loves Jimmy G.
No, that dude is so enamored with mobile quarterbacks. He drafted Tim Tebow. He was sized for Cam Newton until they actually saw Cam Newton play. But I'm just saying that dude's always wanted he loves Marcus Mariota, so I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow went like Malik Willis and had Marcus Mariota on the
You
roster.
can try to finagle all you want. Derek Carr is not coming to Washington, okay?
I'm going to keep pushing it till it doesn't happen.
I say it's a 10% chance that we get an elite quarterback here, Scott. I've felt that way this entire time. I would love for it to happen. I just feel like organizationally, how you're building this team, I know we would love to be. We can't compete really until we get that quarterback in here. I just don't know with how the hurdles that would have to be in place for it to happen. I just don't see it happening with how much would have to be given for them to be accepting of that trade as well. I find it very, very slim if that's going to happen. So 10% for me. What do you think, Reed?
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit higher than you two just because I want it to happen so bad. I'm gonna go 20%, but you're right. Like if you really look at it, the only quarterback that would make sense is Russell Wilson since Aaron Rodgers is off the table. Deshaun Watson has all this going on, and it really depends on Russell Wilson. Like he might not want to leave Seattle. He might just say no straight up. So yeah, it's tough, but I'll go with 20% just because I want to remain hopeful.
And one thing I will say, Seattle is playing this correctly. If you really are looking to trade Russell, you don't say anything about trading him. You say you want to keep him, you want to keep him. It builds the stock up more and more.
Mhm.
Last
Also,
question.
if you're Seattle, you're telling Russell, yeah, just tell everyone you're staying here.
Yeah.
Like you said, just keep building it up.
Exactly. And now the last question that we have for this pod, it's a deep one from Scott. I love that. Deep stuff. The next one is, why do you think this franchise fails to succeed and has done for 20 plus years? Is it players, coaches, culture, ownership? What is the one thing you would do to bring long-lasting success to the franchise if you had the chance, Reed?
I mean, well, let's
Heavy-hitting
be honest.
questions.
Yeah. The reason why we have been stuck in purgatory, aka mediocrity and below, is because we had somebody for a very long time that wasn't patient enough to allow coaches, players to develop. Somebody who stuck his nose into professionals' business and had no idea what he was doing. Somebody who tried to call the shots, pull the string. Somebody who tried to invade Ukraine. Somebody somebody that was just that he didn't know what he was doing. And I think that right now, the fact that he's taking a step back is a very good thing. He's letting football people run it. We hope it's been a very small sample size, but it appears to be going in the right direction. Of course, the few things. Stan Snyder, he's the reason why. If I'm just being completely honest, and the fact that he's almost on his way out, it's either a good thing, and if he's not on his way out, then hopefully he just hides in his cave and only comes out once a year to check and see if his shadow's there, and if it's then hopefully he stays there and lets football people do what they want to do, because this is literally his fault, all of it.
Yeah, look, basically for the last 20 years, you could call it culture. Yeah, it's all of that, but it is because of Snyder, who was power hungry, who was probably bullied most of his life, and so once he had a big bunch of money, he went and bought Washington. He then could do what he wanted. He had this complex, this power complex of bullying people, making them feel small, and obviously by the Dwayne Haskins draft pick, we know by now that was Snyder's pick, and obviously Snyder cannot scout. He doesn't know actually what to look for, running around telling Jay Gruden, you don't know what to look for in a quarterback, look at what Dwayne's doing. Obviously, Jay actually knows a little bit more than you, sir. But the fact is that he needed to be put into his place. And it looks like by now that has happened. So, look, I understand that the past 20 years was indicative of what Snyder did to them, because I don't think there's any mincing of words or confusion. It is because of Dan. From the top down, straight up. But do I believe it because Dan being at the top is limiting this team from winning in the future? No. I feel like he has been put into his place, and I want to give those people a chance, because it's the first time in 20 years that we have actual respected, valuable, credible people running the football org, and things are turning around. And I want to make sure and see that seen to success. Last thing I want is Snyder stifling his nose in again, because everyone's complaining about Rivera and Scott Turner and stuff, and then firing Rivera when he's starting to get this going just to give the power back to Snyder. I would absolutely hate for that to happen. Now, what was the other part of the question? I completely forgot. My goodness.
I don't know.
What is the one thing you would do to bring long-lasting success to the franchise if you had the chance?
Yeah.
I don't want to say that on air. To be perfectly honest, what I would do, I certainly would not eat horse poop. That's for sure.
Oh, that's what he meant. I thought he meant like, what would you do? Like, what would you change about the front office and stuff?
Oh, no.
Oh God. Oh yeah. No. Yeah, we can't say that. I would probably start it, and so I would probably start invading an innocent country that was right below me just to try to get back to my glory days.
You're ridiculous. I was wrong. There was one more question from Digital Guru in our Discord chat server. This is going to be pretty easy to explain and answer. Hall, would you trade a first-round draft pick and a player for Jimmy G, assuming there's a lot of competition from other teams?
No. He's worth a fourth rounder at best.
If anything, if he's worth that. I mean, if San Francisco's willing to move on, it kind of shows you. Jimmy G had a hurt finger on his throwing hand for a playoff game, and they still didn't start Trey Lance, which kind of tells you a lot about Trey Lance.
Hey, look, I'm going to go off of what I love Speak For Yourself, Marcellus Wiley, and Emmanuel Acho. They still got people in the league they know, like, talk to all the time. I'd said this like a year and a half ago. They were like, people I've talked to, like, they were talking about, like, people I know, talk to, they play for the Packers. They were like, Jordan Love is not it at all.
Yeah.
It's kind of coming to light that you're kind of seeing that. And they said the same thing about Trey Lance. They were like, look, I asked my boys in the play for the 49ers. They were like, look, Trey Lance is not it. They regret giving up all those picks for him. And that's why they're talking about Jimmy G might not even be traded this offseason. So
Yeah, well, the only thing with Trey Lance was it was kind of known he was going to be a bit of a project. I mean, with how long he started, but
how many
that
arguments
natural
I got
talent,
into? My
that
goodness.
natural talent is unreal, and I think I still think he's going to be good. I've heard opposite. I've heard both. I've read some articles where people say that he's doing fantastic. He's done great. Obviously, he couldn't. He still has a lot to learn, but with where he is, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Trey Lance. I will say,
make no mistake, the only reason they are contemplating trading Jimmy G or going to Trey Lance is to justify the trade. Because if that dude continues to sit on the bench with how much they gave up, I don't think John Lynch and Kyle are going to be around much longer.
And because Jimmy G's just not good. Like, which one has more potential?
Right.
Which one has the ability to take your offense to the next level? But yeah, and Jimmy G.
Last question on serious note. We got to end this on a serious note. This is from our guy on Twitter, number 2 Commanders fan. Thank you, brother. If Vladimir Putin was starving, would you let him eat the corn out of your shite? Read.
Yeah, just to keep him alive so he could help me with my strategy of taking over that nation down to the south that I want to. No, I'm just kidding. No, that guy sucks. He's not cool. He's not chill. So no, I wouldn't.
No, I would not, sir. You already know the answer to the question. I know you already responded to that on Twitter. I got my feelings on Putin, and they're not for this podcast. They're
yes. Let's go Ukraine, number 1, all of world. Beat Russia, beat Mother Russia. Yes, number 1 DJ, number 1.
Long live the ghost of Kiev. A lot of people are talking
that
about.
Guy gets it.
A lot of people are talking about that's a myth. Yeah. Well, a lot of legends start out as myths, sir. But I did see some pictures come up on Twitter today of a certain older pilot that they're saying is the ghost, and he took down 6 Russian MiGs. So credit to you, sir.
Hey,
continue whooping
I'll
some
miss.
butt.
Yeah, who would have thought that Jesse would have seen Bigfoot this summer if he wasn't real? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. So. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And if you have any responses, we want to hear from you guys in the YouTube comments. What do you think about these questions? Is it kind of crazy that the Washington Commanders could have a site down in Dumfries or Woodbridge, way south of the DMV and DC? Let us know what you think in the comments, everybody. We'll see you on Monday for a brand new episode. I'm Kyle.
Please don't go any farther than Sterling. Like, let's not get ridiculous with this, guys. I'm Hall.
And I'm NFL scout Daniel Kelly. Buy my book, Whatever It Takes, only exclusively at
Why? Why do you have to do that?
It's sold.
Why? Why do you have to do that?
What?
Why?
He's a nice guy.
Very nice guy. But last thing I'll say, the National Harbor is the only place they can go. They can't go back to RFK. Dulles is too far north. National Harbor is perfect. You have 3 different highways stretching off from it. Traffic's going to be much easier, and you have the land to be able to have a new stadium and offices, training facility, all that jazz. National Harbor is the only spot you can go to. RFK is not even possible at this point.
From my understanding, National Harbor is not even really on the table because they want to have their own casino attached to it. And you already got MGM right there.
Yeah, and because it's a harbor and it's water. What are they going to do? Kyle played on a raft?
Nah, you saw the moat. We're going to have a moat.
Yeah, dude. With the jet skis, you saw those?
What are they
people on
gonna
the
do?
jet skis on the moat? That was so ridiculous.
Drain it out?
Oh, my God. You think anyone from D.C. is bringing their jet skis down to the moat to just go riding on a random summer day?
When I saw that, I was like, what is this?
Dude, my goodness. Bruce Allen thought that was a great idea. All right, everybody. We'll see you guys on Monday. Washington football. Woo! Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. And if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you get notified when anything new is uploaded to the channel. Also, we just launched theburgundyzone.com. You can go there and find all of our latest news, articles, and the latest episodes that are uploaded. Again, we also have the Discord chat server, where all of our VIP folks are in, like Andy Burrows, Scott Hartley, Sergio Martin is in there as well. Don't miss out on the Discord chat server. Go and check that out. Until next time, everybody, Washington football. Woo!